A clipboard wavers in gloved hands 40 stories above Manhattan. Below, the city hums, oblivious. Above, a temporary construction elevator groans under imaginary weight while its operator sleeps at home, cashing checks for phantom hours. One signature on this inspection form releases $3 million in contractor payments. One signature withheld stalls an entire tower for weeks. If you love stories about corruption that hides in plain sight, power wielded by invisible hands, and empires built on nothing but shakedown artistry and paperwork, make sure to follow, because this one ends with federal judges dismantling a scheme so brazen it operated for over a decade in the most scrutinized construction market on earth. New York City, spring 1996. Rain drums against the windows of the Department of Buildings headquarters. Inside, Mayor Rudolph Giuliani faces television cameras and announces the suspension of 42 elevator inspectors. Nearly 3/4 of the entire inspection force without pay. The words hit the construction industry like a crane collapse. The city operates 70,000 elevators. Everyone requires inspection twice per year. 42 inspectors just vanished. The machinery of vertical New York grinds toward paralysis. This is not the beginning. This is the exposure. The game started years earlier in union halls and on construction sites, where temporary elevators carry workers and materials to rising steel frames. The real story lives in two parallel corruption schemes that fed off each other like parasites in the same body. City inspectors taking bribes, union officials running ghost payrolls. Both schemes thrived because of one simple truth about high-rise construction. Everything moves vertically. Control the elevators, control the money. The system works like this. A skyscraper under construction needs temporary construction elevators to move workers, tools, concrete, steel. These cars run on external tracks bolted to the building frame. Union operators run them. City inspectors certify them safe. Contractors pay for both. The hourly rate in the mid-1990s hits $35 for regular time, $70 for nights and weekends. Multiply that across dozens of major construction sites. Multiply it by phantom workers who never show up. The numbers climb into tens of millions. Local 1 of the International Union of Elevator Constructors holds jurisdiction over these jobs in New York City and the surrounding counties. 2,000 members. About 150 classified as operators during peak construction years. The union maintains a hiring list. When a contractor needs an operator, the union dispatches the next person on the list. Fair, impartial, transparent, that is the rule. The reality operates differently. Charles Novak becomes business agent for Local 1 in the early 1990s. Stocky build, gravel voice, knows everyone. His longtime associate, Anthony DeGennaro, works construction sites as a de facto union representative. Not elected, not official. But everyone knows he speaks for Local 1. Matthew Joseph Downey operates the same way. These men do not follow the hiring list. They hand-pick operators. They place phone calls to contractors. They provide names. The contractors hire those names without question, because questioning creates problems. Inspections get delayed. Equipment fails certification. Work stops. Money bleeds. The operators Novak and his crew select understand the arrangement. They submit timesheets claiming hours they never worked. Sometimes they show up for a fraction of the shift. Sometimes they never appear at all. One operator works simultaneously at 3 different construction sites on the same day, according to payroll records. Another holds a full-time job as a New York City fire inspector while collecting operator wages for 40-hour weeks at Riverside South. A third works as a tax accountant during the day and operates elevators at night, except he does not operate elevators. He cashes checks. The mechanics of the fraud operate with brutal simplicity. The corrupt union representative collects the operator's paycheck directly from the contractor's payroll office. He forges the operator's signature on the back. He cashes the check. He keeps the majority. He distributes cuts to other corrupt officials. Sometimes the operator cashes his own check and kicks back a predetermined percentage. Either way, the money flows up. At some sites, Contractors participate willingly because the union representatives bribe contractor employees to approve the fraudulent timesheets. At other sites, contractors pay because refusal means labor trouble. Organizers appear at non-union sites. They demand payments to avoid disruption. The payments get disguised as wages for Local 1 members who never set foot on the property. Ghost workers, ghost hours, real checks. The numbers accumulate. Between 1996 and 1998, Matthew Downey alone moves more than $1.5 million through a Bank of New York account he opens under the name Matlin. Over 1,400 third-party checks flow through this single account. Federal investigators later examine the endorsements. Every signature appears written by the same hand in 30 different names. Handwriting experts match the writing to Downey's exemplars. The scheme touches major projects across Manhattan: 10 Rockefeller Plaza, the Marriott Hotel on 3rd Avenue, Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, the MetLife Building, 2 Broadway, the new Metropolitan Transportation Authority headquarters. At this last site, investigators document a multi-million-dollar component of the overall fraud. The temporary elevator cars at 2 Broadway run nearly continuously during construction. The payroll records show multiple operators collecting wages simultaneously for the same equipment. The math does not work. The contractors pay anyway. By 2001, the federal investigation estimates the no-show job scheme cost the construction industry at least $6 million in just 2 years. The real total across 12 years likely climbs much higher. Nobody kept complete records because nobody was supposed to be keeping records, but the union corruption represents only half the game. While Local 1 officials sell ghost jobs, city elevator inspectors sell something equally valuable: their signatures, their approval, their willingness to look the other way. The Department of Buildings employs 58 elevator inspectors in 1996. Their job sounds straightforward: inspect elevators, verify safety, certify compliance with building codes, sign off on permits. In practice, these inspectors hold enormous informal power. A delayed inspection can cost a contractor thousands of dollars per day in idle worker wages and schedule slippage. A failed inspection requiring re-inspection multiplies the pain. An inspector who writes up unnecessary violations generates expensive repair work. The inspectors know this. The contractors know this. The game develops organically. An inspector arrives late or not at all. The contractor waits. Hours pass. The meter runs. The inspector finally appears and suggests that a small payment might prevent future scheduling difficulties. The contractor pays. Next time the inspector arrives on time, the relationship establishes itself. Another variation: the inspector finds violations that may or may not exist. Some violations require genuine correction, others amount to interpretation. The inspector suggests that certain elevator companies could fix these violations quickly. The elevator companies pay the inspector a commission. The contractor pays inflated repair bills. Everyone profits except the building owner. A third pattern emerges. Inspectors demand payment simply for performing their basic duties, showing up on time, conducting the inspection without hostility, processing paperwork promptly. These are not extras. These are the job. But in the corrupted system, everything becomes negotiable. Everything carries a price. The Department of Investigation runs surveillance beginning in 1991. 5 years of watching, recording, building cases. They identify a pattern of corruption described by investigators as pervasive. Not isolated incidents, not a few bad actors. A corrupted culture within the inspection division. Federal Bureau of Investigation agents join the investigation. They wire a cooperating contractor. He makes controlled payoffs while wearing recording equipment. The evidence accumulates: bank records, cash withdrawals corresponding to inspection dates, witness testimony, recorded conversations. April 18, 1996. Mayor Giuliani suspends 42 inspectors, 3 top supervisors among them. The announcement shocks the construction industry. Overnight, The city loses most of its elevator inspection capacity. Projects stall. Contractors scramble. The Department of Buildings brings in private inspection firms to fill the gap, eventually paying $5 million to outside contractors for work that should have been handled internally. 1 year later, April 1997, federal prosecutors unseal indictments. 11 inspectors charged with racketeering, extortion, and accepting bribes. The indictments detail a 15-year pattern of corruption generating over $1 million in illegal payments. The charges describe inspectors who treated their positions as franchises, territorial rights to extort specific contractors in specific areas. One inspector allegedly collected $20,000 from a single elevator company over several years. Another demanded payments disguised as consulting fees. A third accepted cash in exchange for ignoring serious safety violations. The indictments paint a picture of systematic betrayal. These inspectors swore to protect public safety. Instead, they auctioned their authority to the highest bidder. The trials proceed through 1997 and 1998. Most defendants plead guilty. A few fight the charges. All lose. The evidence overwhelms their defenses. Recorded conversations, financial records, testimony from contractors who paid, and inspectors who cooperated. The convictions come steadily. But the inspector corruption story, dramatic as it is, operates in parallel to an even larger scheme. While city inspectors sell their signatures for thousands, union officials traffic in millions. The federal investigation of Local 1 begins in late 1997. The Department of Labor and Internal Revenue Service joined the Federal Bureau of Investigation. They analyze payroll records from dozens of construction sites. They interview operators. They follow money trails. The evidence reveals a racketeering enterprise operating within the union. January 2002. Federal prosecutors unseal indictments against 27 people connected to Local 1. Union vice presidents, business agents, de facto representatives, members who participated in the fraud. The lead defendant is Matthew Joseph Downey. His Matlin account becomes Exhibit A. The second major defendant is Charles Novak, by then former business agent, charged as the architect of the scheme. The investigation uncovers details that would be comic if they were not criminal. One operator, Terence Carr, is the son-in-law of Local 1 President John Green. On April 27, 1998, payroll records show Carr worked 30 hours in a single day. 10 hours including overtime at 10 Hanover Square. 12 hours including overtime at Riverside South. 8 hours at Battery Park City. Carr collected wages for all 30 hours. Federal investigators document he was physically present at none of these sites. Another cooperating witness secretly records Matthew Downey, coaching him on what to tell investigators. Downey instructs the witness to claim he was present at every job site, to say Downey cashed checks as a favor to save the operator a trip to the bank. To maintain the fiction regardless of evidence, the recording becomes devastating trial evidence. The defendants face overwhelming proof. Most plead guilty. Business agent Robert Shannon pleads guilty. De facto representatives Anthony DeGennaro and William Barthold plead guilty. Operator after operator pleads guilty. More than 30 convictions accumulate through 2002 and 2003. Charles Novak refuses to plead. His case goes to trial in January 2004 before Judge David G. Trager in the Eastern District of New York. The trial lasts weeks. Prosecutors present the Matlin account records. They call Anthony DeGennaro, who testifies in detail about the mechanics of the fraud. They present evidence of operators who were not elevator mechanics at all. A tax accountant, a fire inspector, a university employee. People admitted to union membership through corrupt means, specifically to serve as ghost workers. The jury deliberates. On March 1, 2004, they return guilty verdicts on racketeering, money laundering, conspiracy, and unlawful labor payments. Novak faces up to 20 years in federal prison. At sentencing, Judge Trager imposes 9 years imprisonment plus 3 years supervised release. Novak is 67 years old. He will serve most of his sentence. The convictions decapitate Local One's corrupt leadership. President John Green and Secretary-Treasurer Anthony Origo, though not criminally charged, are removed from office in 2003 by the International Union for unauthorized transfer of $78,000 in union funds. The International appoints interim leadership. Special elections follow. New officers take control. The old guard is gone. But federal prosecutors are not finished. The union itself remains a target. The organization aided and abetted the scheme. It provided the infrastructure. It maintained the hiring list that corrupt officials ignored. It looked away for over a decade while millions were stolen from contractors, and honest union members lost work opportunities. October 2005. The United States Attorney for the Eastern District of New York announces a non-prosecution agreement with Local One. The union admits responsibility. It accepts complicity in violating the Taft-Hartley Act and mail fraud statutes. In exchange for avoiding criminal prosecution, Local One agrees to comprehensive reforms. The agreement mandates appointment of an independent federal examiner. The examiner will monitor union operations for 3 years. The union must implement procedures to track operator hours accurately. No more phantom timesheets. It must maintain the hiring list fairly. No more hand-picked operators. It must computerize all records and make them available to members. Transparency replaces secrecy. It must conduct elections according to federal labor law standards. Democracy replaces boss control. It must immediately investigate and discipline any member who violates union rules or brings the union into disrepute. Most significantly, the agreement bans any practice allowing unauthorized persons to act as union representatives. No more Matthew Downeys. No more Anthony DeGennaros. No more de facto power brokers operating outside official channels. Only elected officers and officially designated shop stewards can speak for Local One. The independent examiner, a firm called the Bradlau Group, begins work in March 2006. They attend union meetings. They review financial records. They investigate allegations. They monitor the implementation of every reform. For 30 months, they watch Local One transform itself. The transformation proves difficult. The union faces a 3-month lockout by major elevator companies in spring 2005. Just as the federal agreement is being finalized, the lockout strains finances and tests solidarity. Then, Local One loses a jurisdictional battle with the International Union of Operating Engineers Local 14 over operation of dual-purpose construction cars. The work that sustained 150 operators evaporates. By 2008, only 33 members are classified as active operators. The no-show jobs are gone, but so are most of the real jobs. Financial problems mount. Legal fees, monitoring costs, deferred payments to defense funds, deferred per capita taxes to the International. The union leadership discloses at a September 2007 membership meeting that Local One owes $262,000 to member defense funds and $160,000 to the International. Members accuse the leadership of mismanagement. The independent examiner reviews all records. They find no misappropriation, just a union that spent beyond its means and now faces consequences. The June 2007 election proves contentious. The son of former President John Green runs for president. The son of convicted racketeer Charles Novak runs for day secretary. They lose. The slate headed by Leonard Legault wins. The old guard makes a final play for power and fails. The new leadership implements cost-cutting measures, adjusts the dues structure, purchases directors' and officers' liability insurance to protect against future misconduct claims. By October 2008, when the independent examiner files his final report, Local One has achieved substantial compliance with all terms of the non-prosecution agreement. The reforms are in place. The corrupt officials are gone. The union operates transparently. Elections are democratic. The hiring list is maintained fairly, though there is almost no operator work left to distribute. The parallel stories converge on a single conclusion. Corruption in elevator inspection and union operations thrived because of information asymmetry and concentrated power. Inspectors knew which violations mattered. Contractors did not. Union officials knew who really controlled job assignments. Members did not. This knowledge gap created opportunity for extortion and fraud. The solution in both cases involved the same elements: transparency, outside oversight, prosecution of wrongdoers, structural reforms to prevent recurrence. The city eventually rebuilds its inspection force with new personnel and enhanced oversight. Private inspection firms continue to supplement city inspectors. The culture of casual bribery is broken, though inspectors continue to wield significant power over construction timelines. Local 1 survives the scandal, but emerges diminished. Membership remains around 2,000, but the operator work that provided opportunities for the original fraud has largely disappeared. The jurisdictional loss to Local 14 proved permanent. The temporary construction elevators that once dotted every major building site now operate under different union control. The federal monitor completed his term. The reforms remain in place. The union functions as it should have from the beginning. The cost of the corruption extends beyond the millions stolen. Construction projects were delayed, while inspectors extracted bribes and union representatives played games with workforce assignments. Building owners paid inflated costs that got passed to tenants and buyers. Honest elevator inspectors were tarred by association with corrupt colleagues. Honest Local 1 members lost work opportunities, while connected insiders collected phantom paychecks. Most significantly, the corruption demonstrated how easily institutional authority can be privatized by those who wield it. An elevator inspector's signature should certify safety. Instead, it became a commodity to be purchased. A union's hiring list should provide equal opportunity. Instead, it became a tool for enrichment and control. The prosecutions sent 37 people to prison. 9 years for Charles Novak. Terms for Robert Shannon, Anthony DeGennaro, William Barthold, Matthew Downey, and dozens more. The inspector cases resulted in additional convictions and sentences. The message was clear. Corruption at this scale would be met with serious consequences. But prison sentences alone do not reform systems. The non-prosecution agreement with Local 1, controversial as it was among some members who saw it as unwarranted government intrusion, forced structural changes that prosecution alone could not achieve. Federal oversight ensured the changes took root. The independent examiner's presence made backsliding difficult. Transparency requirements eliminated the secrecy that enabled fraud. Years after the last conviction, the construction industry in New York operates under tighter controls. Elevator inspections follow established procedures with multiple layers of review. Construction elevator operations are documented and monitored. The Wild West era of casual corruption has ended, replaced by systems designed to prevent its return. The lesson extends beyond elevators and unions. Corruption flourishes where power is concentrated, information is scarce, and oversight is weak. It persists when penalties are minor and enforcement is sporadic. It collapses when prosecutors build overwhelming cases, judges impose serious sentences, and reformers implement lasting structural changes. One signature could stall an entire skyscraper. One signature could release millions in construction funds. For over a decade, corrupt elevator inspectors and union officials sold those signatures to the highest bidder. The game enriched the players and distorted an entire industry. It ended because investigators spent years building cases and prosecutors refused to settle for easy wins against low-level participants. They pursued the architects of the schemes. They held institutions accountable. They demanded reforms that changed how business is conducted. The temporary construction elevators that figured so prominently in the union fraud are largely gone from Local 1's jurisdiction now. The inspection corruption that plagued the Department of Buildings has been systematically addressed. The specific schemes of the 1990s and early 2000s cannot be repeated in their original form, but the incentives that created those schemes remain. Construction in New York City involves enormous sums of money, and complex regulatory requirements. Information asymmetries persist. Inspectors still hold power over project timelines. Union officials still control work assignments. The potential for corruption does not disappear simply because one generation of wrongdoers was caught and punished. The difference now lies in systems designed to catch corruption early and punish it severely. Multiple oversight mechanisms, electronic records that cannot be easily falsified, regular audits, whistleblower protections, federal monitors ready to return if backsliding occurs. These tools do not guarantee perfection. They make large-scale, long-running fraud much harder to sustain. In a midtown high-rise office, a current elevator inspector reviews a checklist. Every item documented, every finding photographed, every signature backed by verifiable evidence. This is not heroism. This is the new normal, a normal created by the prosecutions and reforms of the 2000s. A normal that might prevent the next Charles Novak or Mafia Downey from turning their position into a criminal enterprise. In a Queens Union Hall, Local 1 members check the hiring list on a computer screen. Every name visible, every job assignment recorded, every hour worked documented. This transparency seems unremarkable now. It seemed impossible when corrupt officials controlled access to information and used that control to enrich themselves. The elevator game is over. The players are in prison or removed from power. The rules have changed. The oversight is permanent. What seemed like an unshakable system of corruption proved breakable once prosecutors assembled the evidence, judges imposed serious sentences, and reformers forced structural change. The skyscrapers keep rising. The elevators keep moving. The inspectors keep certifying. The unions keep dispatching workers. But the casual corruption that once seemed like just another cost of doing business in New York has been exposed, prosecuted, and prevented from returning. One signature can still stall a tower or release millions. But now that signature must be earned honestly, not purchased in a pay-to-play system. The change came at a cost of federal investigations lasting years, dozens of prosecutions, hundreds of hours of testimony, and millions in legal fees. The change came because prosecutors refused to accept corruption as normal, and reformers refused to accept promises without enforcement. The elevator game taught a lesson about institutional corruption. It thrives in darkness. It collapses in sunlight. It returns if vigilance fades. The inspectors and union officials who ran the schemes believed they were untouchable. They believed the system protected them. They were wrong. The system eventually turned on them because enough people decided that corruption was unacceptable and were willing to do the hard work of building cases that would stand up in court. That hard work produced justice. Charles Novak in federal prison. Dozens of others convicted. Local 1 reformed. The inspection system overhauled. A message sent that corruption at this scale will be met with serious consequences. The real victory was not the convictions. The real victory was the reforms that followed. Systems that make fraud harder, transparency that makes corruption visible, oversight that catches problems early. These changes persist beyond any individual case. They create a new baseline for how elevator inspection and union operations function in New York City. The temporary construction elevators are gone. The corrupt inspectors are fired or convicted. The union officials who ran ghost payrolls are in prison or banned from union work. What remains is a cautionary tale about how corruption takes root and how it can be eliminated when prosecutors, reformers, and oversight mechanisms work together toward lasting change.